June 6, 1944. D-Day. When we hear those words, we picture this: the dawn, the roar of naval guns, and the desperate, bloody charge onto the beaches of Normandy. We see the heroes who stormed Omaha, who clawed their way up the bluffs against impossible odds. But this was not the first battle of D-Day. The invasion of Fortress Europe did not begin on the sand. It began 5 hours earlier, in total darkness, thousands of feet above enemy territory. This is the story of the 101st and audacious Airborne Divisions. 13,000 men who would be the first to set foot in France. This is not the story of those who stormed the beaches. This is the story of those who fell from the sky. Their mission was vital. Their success was critical. But the plan had failed before the first boot ever touched the ground. We are Allied soldier stories, and we bring these forgotten personal accounts to light. If you believe these stories must be told, subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode. To understand what happened in the sky that night, we must first understand the ground. The man tasked with defending this coast was Field Marshal Erwin Rommel. The Desert Fox. He knew the Allies were coming, and he was brilliant. Rommel knew he couldn't stop the Allies on the beaches alone. He had to stop them before they even landed. For the Airborne, he prepared a special kind of hell. He planted hundreds of thousands of heavy wooden poles in every open field large enough for a glider to land. The troops called them Rommel's asparagus. Many were topped with mines, but his most devastating weapon was water. Using old locks and dams, Rommel ordered the low-lying fields and marshes behind Utah Beach to be flooded. He created vast, hidden lakes, shallow but deep enough to drown a man weighed down by his equipment. The Allied plan had to navigate this trap. It was twofold. Mission Boston was for the 82nd Airborne Division. Their objective was strategic: capture the town of Sainte-Mère-Église, a vital crossroads, and secure the bridges over the Murderette River. Mission Albany was for the 101st Airborne, the Screaming Eagles. Their job was tactical, and perhaps even more critical. They had to support the 4th Infantry Division landing on Utah Beach. This meant capturing the 4 narrow causeways, the roads that led inland from the beach. If they failed, the thousands of men landing on Utah would be trapped on the sand, pinned between the ocean and Rommel's flooded fields, and systematically annihilated by German artillery. Major General Maxwell Taylor, commanding the 101st, told his men simply, "The success of the landings at Utah Beach depends on you." To accomplish this, each man was turned into a walking arsenal. This wasn't just a parachute and a rifle. Think of the weight. On top of his M1 Garand rifle or Thompson submachine gun, he carried a .45 pistol, a trench knife strapped to his ankle, a gas mask, which many privately thought was useless, rations for 3 days, a canteen of water, medical supplies, including morphine syringes, and then the explosives. Every man carried grenades. Many carried gammon bombs, essentially a cloth bag they could fill with C3 plastic explosive, a custom-made bomb for whatever target they found. Each man carried over 100 pounds, or 45 kilograms, of gear, and buried deep in his pocket was perhaps the most important piece of equipment of all, a small tin toy in the shape of a cricket. A child's toy that would decide life and death in the darkness. They were so heavy, they could not stand up on their own. They waddled to the plains, needing help from ground crews just to climb the steps of the C-47 Dakota transport plane. One paratrooper remembered the mood. We were singing. We sang Blood on the Risers. Every dirty song we knew. We were loud, We were obnoxious. We were terrified. The singing, it just kept the fear from taking over. Kept you from thinking about, what was coming. The flight began at airfields all over southern England. For nearly 2 hours it was calm. The men sat in the dim light of the fuselage, packed shoulder to shoulder. Some prayed, some slept. Many were quietly, violently ill. They were an armada, over 820 planes, carrying the vanguard of the invasion. But as this great fleet, flying in a tight V of V's formation, crossed the French coast near the Cotentin Peninsula, the sky erupted. The Germans were waiting. A thick, low-lying cloud bank had scattered the formation, and as they emerged, they flew directly into a pre-sighted trap. The pilots called it Flak Alley. This wasn't just random fire. It was a dense, calculated wall of 20mm and 88mm anti-aircraft guns. The 88, the most feared gun of the war, fired shells that exploded at a set altitude, sending white-hot shrapnel tearing through the thin aluminum skin of the C-47s. The C-47 pilots, many of them on their first combat mission, broke. The tight formation dissolved into a panicked mob. Pilots increased speed to over 150 miles per hour, far too fast for a safe jump. They weaved and dived to evade the flak, completely disregarding the planned drop zones. Inside the planes, it was chaos. Men were thrown from their seats, the cabins filled with smoke and the smell of cordite. The green jump light, which was supposed to turn on for a precise 2-minute window, was now just a signal for survival. One plane, carrying the commander of Easy Company, 506th Regiment, Lieutenant Thomas Meehan, was hit directly by an 88 shell. It exploded in mid-air, killing everyone on board. In that instant, Easy Company became leaderless. Lieutenant Richard Winters, in another plane, witnessed the horror. The plane lurched violently. I was in the tail, and I saw the explosion tear the right wing off. The entire plane was on fire. Men were jumping into the fire. The red light never even came on, just the green light. The pilot was just trying to save the plane. We just got out. All across Normandy, pilots were just trying to get out. They turned on the green light far too early, or far too late. Another soldier described the jump itself. The prop blast. It hits you like a freight train. 1 second you're in the plane, the next you're just spinning. You can't breathe. It's not a graceful float. It's a violent, terrifying fall. I just prayed for the opening shock. The plan was gone. Of the 6,600 paratroopers of the 101st Airborne, no more than 1,000 were dropped on target. Over 500 were dropped so far from their objectives they would be listed as missing, many for days. The rest were scattered to the wind. They landed, not as an army, but as 6,000 individuals, lost, alone, and deep in enemy territory. For those who survived the violent jump, the real nightmares began. The first was the water. The Germans had intentionally flooded the low-lying fields behind Utah Beach. Dozens of men, weighed down by their 100-pound packs, landed in Rommel's flooded fields. They were tragic, silent deaths. The men, encumbered, unable to swim, simply sank in 2 meters of water. Their comrades, landing nearby, could only listen in the dark to the hopeless splashing sounds. And then, the silence. Here is the testimony of one who barely survived it. I landed in water, maybe 4 feet deep. My equipment, my pack, it was pulling me down. I was drowning. I had to get my knife, the one on my ankle, and cut my straps. I cut everything. I lost my rifle. I lost my ammo. I lost everything. But I was alive. I saw 2 others, not so lucky. The second nightmare was the towns. The most infamous drop occurred at Sainte-Mère-Église, the objective of the 82nd Airborne. A Pathfinder team, meant to guide the main force, was dropped by mistake directly in the town square. At that exact moment, a house on the square was on fire, brightly illuminating the entire scene. The German garrison, already on alert, watched in disbelief as American paratroopers floated down, perfectly silhouetted against the flames. It was a massacre. The Germans shot the men as they hung helpless in their harnesses or as they landed in the trees. Private John Steele of the 505th Regiment had the most surreal experience of all. His parachute snagged on the steeple of the town church. He hung there, just feet from the ringing church bell. A German soldier spotted him. Steele was shot in the foot. He had no choice. He played dead. For 2 hours, John Steele hung from that church, pretending to be a corpse, watching the brutal battle for Sainte-Mère-Église rage beneath him. He was eventually cut down and taken prisoner. The third nightmare was the bocage. The Alsace, fields of Normandy, are not open. They are separated by hedgerows, but this is not a garden hedge. This is a fortress. A Norman hedgerow is a 5-foot-thick, 10-foot-high wall of ancient earth, stone, and tangled roots. For centuries, farmers had piled stones at the edge of their fields. Trees and thorn bushes grew through them, creating an impassable barrier. For a lost paratrooper, these hedgerows were a maze, a terrifying labyrinth in the dark. Every opening was a potential ambush, every corner a potential machine gun nest. As one soldier described them, they weren't hedges, they were walls, green walls, of earth and stone. You'd crawl for an hour to get around one, and there was just another one. And you never knew what was waiting on the other side. But the fourth and most common nightmare was the loneliness. A soldier, lost, his rifle probably missing, hiding in a ditch. He can hear German voices. He can hear the bolts of rifles. He is totally, completely alone. His survival and the success of the entire invasion now depended on a toy, the cricket. He would take it out, his hand shaking. He would press the metal strip. Click, one click was the challenge. He would wait, his heart pounding in his chest, listening. Was that a footstep? Was it a cow? Or was it a German patrol drawn by the sound? The seconds would stretch into an eternity. And then, from the darkness, click, click. The response, the most beautiful sound in the world. One paratrooper recalled that feeling of terror and relief. I landed alone. I was the loneliest guy in the world. I heard Germans. I just lay in a ditch for an hour, didn't dare move. Finally, I got the nerve. I grabbed my clicker, and from the darkness, click, click, my buddy. It was the most beautiful sound in the world. Click by click, soldier by soldier. These scattered men began to form ad hoc units. A private would find a sergeant from a different regiment. A lieutenant would find 2 privates from a different company. Ranks didn't matter. Units didn't matter. All that mattered was that they were American. They were an army of stragglers, and they were about to achieve the impossible. By sunrise, around 5 a.m., a first lieutenant from Easy Company had gathered a small, mixed group of men. His name was Richard D. Winters. He had just learned that his commanding officer, Thomas Meehan, the man whose plane had exploded, was missing and presumed dead. By right of succession, Winters was now the commander of Easy Company. What was left of it? He had 12 men from 3 different companies. A runner approached him with an urgent order from battalion. A German artillery battery, just north of their position, at a farm called Brécourt Manor, was firing directly onto causeway number 2. This was the main exit from Utah Beach. The 4th Infantry Division was scheduled to land there in 1 hour. The order was simple: take it out. Winters looked at his 12 men. They were exhausted, spooked, and they weren't even all his. They had no heavy weapons, just rifles, machine guns, and grenades. They were about to attack an entrenched position of 50 to 60 veteran German soldiers. What happened next is still taught at West Point as a textbook example of small unit tactics. This was not a chaotic charge. It was surgery. Winters led his men to the edge of the field. He saw it, a long trench connecting 4 105mm howitzers, spaced hundreds of feet apart. Machine gun nests provided crossfire. Winters didn't just attack. He built a plan. In seconds, he established a base of fire. He put his 2 light machine gunners, one of them Carwood Lipton, in a position to suppress the main German trench. He split his tiny force. He would lead one team on a frontal assault using the hedgerow as cover. Another team would flank wide and destroy the guns one by one. He looked at his men. "Fire," he said. The machine guns opened up. The Germans were pinned. Winters and his assault team crawled through the grass. They got to the first trench. Winters himself described the assault. "We assaulted the first trench. I jumped in. A German soldier was just coming out of a dugout. We fired at the same time. I was just faster." We cleared the trench and used it as our highway to attack the first gun. He and his men, including Private Bill Guarner, moved down the trench. They used grenades. They used their rifles. They were a whirlwind of violence. They reached the first 105mm cannon. They placed a TNT charge, packed with gammon bombs, and lit the fuse. One down, they moved to the second trench, toward the second gun. The Germans were now firing back, hard. Winters and his team cleared the trench, and as they secured the second gun, Winters noticed something in the German command dugout. A map. He grabbed it. It wasn't just this battery. It was a map of every single German artillery and machine gun position in the entire Utah Beach sector. He knew, in that instant, this map was more valuable than the guns themselves. He told Carwood Lipton to get it back to battalion, immediately. They destroyed the second gun. 2 down. Now, the Germans were fully alerted. Machine gun fire was raking the field. Winters saw a team of his own men, from another company, pinned down in the field. He left the safety of the trench, ran across the open ground under fire to lead them into the assault. His non-commissioned officer, Sergeant Carwood Lipton, watched it happen. Lieutenant Winters, he was the leadership. He ran out into the open, under fire, to get us moving. He was everywhere. He never, ever showed fear. He was the reason we won that fight. They took the third gun, 3 down, but the fourth gun was tougher. It was further away, defended by another machine gun nest. Winters' small force was running low on ammunition. And then, reinforcements. Lieutenant Ronald Spares, from Dog Company, arrived with a handful of men. Spares, a man with a fearsome, almost mythic reputation, saw the situation. Winters was organizing a new base of fire. Spares decided on a more direct approach. He ordered his men to charge. Spares himself ran out of the trench, across the open field, directly at the fourth gun position, with his submachine gun firing. His men, stunned by his audacity, followed him. The Germans, equally stunned, were overrun. Spares and his men took the final gun, 4 down. The battle was over. It had taken 3 hours. Winters and his small band of 12 men, reinforced by spares, had destroyed a veteran German artillery battery, killed dozens, and captured one of the most important intelligence documents of D-Day. The cost was shockingly light. 1 man, Private Popeye Wynne, was wounded. Only a few others had minor injuries. Winters simply walked back to his command post, the vital map in his hand. The threat to Utah Beach was over. At 6:30 a.m., as the sun rose over Normandy, the first wave of the 4th Infantry Division hit Utah Beach. The first man off the first boat was Brigadier General Theodore Roosevelt, Jr. He was 56 years old, the son of a president. He was riddled with arthritis and walked with a cane. He was the only general to land in the first wave on D-Day. His landing craft, like almost all the others, had drifted. They landed more than a mile south of their objective. A young officer ran up to him, panicked. "Sir," he said, "we've been dropped in the wrong place." Roosevelt looked around, leaned on his cane, and said the most famous words of that landing. His response became legendary. "We'll start the war from right here." Because of the chaos, the Germans were confused. Because of the men at Brécourt Manor, the heavy artillery was silent. The landings at Utah were a stunning success. The 4th Infantry Division moved inland. By noon, they had linked up with the 1st, exhausted, grime-covered paratroopers of the 101st Airborne, who were holding the causeways, just as they had promised. By the end of the day, Utah Beach had seen over 20,000 men land, with less than 200 casualties. It was a miracle bought just a few miles away, with the blood, chaos, and confusion of the airborne drop. Mission Albany was a tactical failure. The planes were scattered, the drop zones were missed. By the end of D-Day, the 101st Airborne had suffered over 4,200 casualties. Hundreds were dead or missing. But it was a stunning, strategic success. Because the chaos itself became a weapon. The German command was paralyzed. They were receiving panicked reports of American paratroopers everywhere. In Sainte-Mère-Église, in Carentan, miles away from any objective. They couldn't send reinforcements to the beaches because they thought they were being invaded by tens of thousands from all directions. They weren't fighting an army, they were fighting 6,000 ghosts. The invasion of Normandy did not begin with the roar of a landing craft ramp. It began with a single lonely click in the dark. Thank you for watching. There are countless stories like this still waiting to be told. The story of the men at Omaha, the British at Sword and Gold, the Canadians at Juno. To ensure these personal histories are not forgotten, please subscribe to Allied Soldier Stories. We have new stories every week. Click here to watch our next episode as we continue to give a voice to the men who fought.